The morning sun was barely warming the dust when I rode up to her place. Wasn't much to see, just a sagging porch, a roof line that leaned westward, and a fence line that looked like it had lost a brawl with a buffalo. Still, it stood there stubborn as the woman who called it home. I hadn't planned on stopping. Wasn't the sort to get tied up in other folks' business. But my horse, Cass, needed water, and truth was I hadn't spoken to a soul in 3 days. She came out slow, wiping her hands on her apron like she wasn't sure if she wanted to wave or raise a rifle. I tipped my hat. Fence took a hit. I asked, nodding toward the splintered rails. She looked past me, like I was a shadow stretching long in the wrong direction. Storm 3 nights back. Lightning spooked the mare, drove her clean through the north line. I ain't got the time nor the tools to mend it. Her voice was low and even, the kind of voice that doesn't rise for much. I like that. I told her I could fix it if she didn't mind me taking water for the horse and a bit for myself. She studied me a beat too long. You a ranch hand? She asked. Sometimes. Mostly I just keep moving. She gave the barest nod and turned toward the barn. Tools are inside. If you're going to do it right. I spent the morning digging out rotten posts and cutting fresh rails. Her land wasn't good land. Not enough grass, too much wind, but she kept it together, patchwork style. No husband around, though I didn't ask. There was a child's toy, a carved wooden doll, half buried by the porch steps, and that told me enough. She didn't talk while I worked, but I noticed her watching. Not nosy, just careful, measured, like she learned not to trust too quick. She brought out water at midday, handed it to me without speaking. Name's Bo, I said, more to fill the silence than anything else. Miriam. Storm do any worse damage? She hesitated, then tore the chimney loose. Lost 2 hens. Otherwise, we're fine, though we made me glance at the house. That's when I saw her, a girl, maybe 8 years old, peeking through the curtains with eyes too big for her face. She vanished quick as she'd come. She don't talk much, Miriam said, setting the pitcher down on the porch rail. Not since the funeral. I didn't ask who died. You live long enough out here, you stop prying at other folks' grief. It's like poking a cactus. You'll find the tender part, but not without blood. I worked through the afternoon, every nail like a prayer against the wind. The girl came out once, limping slightly as she crossed to the barn. Her hair was tied in 2 crooked braids. She didn't look at me. I kept my hammer quiet as she passed. By evening, the fence stood straight. Not perfect, but sound. I dusted off my shirt and packed up the tools. Miriam stood at the porch again, arms folded, watching the horizon more than me. You want supper? She asked, like it cost her something to offer. I hadn't eaten all day, but I shook my head. I should keep moving. Thank you, though. She reached into her apron, pulled out a coin. For your trouble. I didn't ask for pay. I don't take charity, and I don't give it. I stepped back. It ain't charity. It felt like the kind of fence that needed mending. She stared at me, coin still in her hand. In the quiet, I could hear the girl inside humming to herself, soft and slow like she didn't know anyone could hear. Miriam's voice lowered. The world doesn't hand out kindness for free, Mr. Bo. Not anymore. I didn't argue. Just tipped my hat again and turned toward the trail. I rode half a mile before I let Cass slow down. The sun was bleeding into the hills behind me. I didn't look back. Truth was, I hadn't meant to stay even that long. But something in that place stuck with me. Not the house, not the broken fence, but the look in Miriam's eyes. Like she was holding back a flood behind a dam made of nails and threadbare faith. The kind of look you don't forget. 3 days later, I was halfway to Dry Wells when a deputy rode up on a red roan and called my name like it tasted wrong in his mouth. That's when things started to twist. The deputy was a wiry kid, maybe 22 if he lied about his age. Badge crooked on his chest, sweat darkening his collar. He looked nervous. Men usually are when they come looking for trouble and find more than they bargained for. You Bo Ransom? He asked, like he was hoping I'd say no. I didn't answer right off. Took my time dismounting, patting Cass like nothing was amiss. We were just outside Dry Wells, near the freight station. Sun was high, no wind to speak of. Still, I could feel something shift in the air, like the moment before a dog goes mean. Depends who's asking, I said finally. He straightened in the saddle. Sheriff Amos Dillard out of Gideon Creek sent me. You're to come with me. I squinted up at him. What for? Suspicion of murder. He tried to make it sound official, like he'd practiced, but his eyes wouldn't hold steady. That name, Amos Dillard, caught like a splinter. Gideon Creek. Miriam's town. I stepped back from Cass, slow and easy. You sure you got the right man? He reached for the paper in his pocket, but his hand trembled and the wind tugged it out before he could show me. The paper spun once in the dust, then caught under Cass's hoof. Damn it, he muttered, sliding down to fetch it. That's when I made my choice. I swung up into the saddle before his boots even touched the ground. Cass lunged forward like she'd been waiting for the word. The deputy shouted something behind me, but I didn't hear the rest. All I knew was I'd left behind a fence and a quiet widow, and now I was riding under the weight of a crime I hadn't committed. I didn't stop until nightfall. Found cover beneath a ridge and rubbed Cass down in the moonlight, heart still racing. Murder. It didn't make sense. I hadn't even drawn a gun since last spring, and I sure hadn't killed anyone near Gideon Creek. Something was wrong. I unrolled my bedroll, but didn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to her, Miriam. She was the only one who knew my name, where I was headed, and she'd watched me ride off with that look, like she was memorizing how I looked in case she never saw me again. Why would she turn me in? By morning, I made up my mind to go back. Not to plead or argue, but to understand. I couldn't outrun something I didn't know. And if Miriam had set the dogs on me, I wanted to look her in the eye when she said why. The road back to Gideon Creek felt longer than it should have. Every rider I passed made my gut tighten. Every glance lingered too long. By the time I crossed into the hills surrounding the town, I'd counted 3 posters on the trail. My face wasn't on them, but it would be soon enough. I left Cass tethered a half-mile out and circled the back way toward the Holloway homestead. The sun was setting, painting the fields in rust and gold. Her place looked quiet. No movement, no smoke from the chimney. Still as a graveyard. I crept through the brush and reached the barn. Slipped inside, shut the door behind me. The air smelled of hay and dust and leather. I waited. She came out not long after, lantern in hand. Her shoulders stiffened the moment she saw me, but she didn't cry out. Just stared. I could have come with a gun, I said. Didn't. Miriam set the lantern down and crossed her arms. You shouldn't be here. No, but I am. Silence stretched between us like taut wire. You sent that letter, I said. Told the law my name, what I looked like. I did. I stepped closer slow. Why? She didn't flinch. Because you were there that night. What night? The night my husband died. The barn creaked. Somewhere outside, a coyote called. He rode with 2 men, she said quietly. Last winter. One of them had a scar down his neck, spoke like a preacher, but lied like the devil. They brought home silver that wasn't theirs. Henry said it was just a haul off a dead man, but I knew better. He stopped sleeping, started drinking. And what's that got to do with me? One night, drunk, he talked about the shootout. Said there was a 4th man, someone who tried to stop it. Said that man shot one of the others clean through the shoulder and disappeared before the law showed. My breath caught. I never knew if he was telling the truth, she said. Until I saw you. You walk like a man who'd been shot once. You touched your left side when you got off that horse. You fixed a fence like someone who owed a debt they couldn't name. And you figured that made me a murderer? She shook her head. No, I figured it made you the only one left who could clear the record. I stared at her, words stuck behind my teeth. I wrote the letter, she said, stepping forward, not to accuse you, but to tell the truth. I sent his confession with it. Told Sheriff Dillard you weren't the one who killed anyone. I thought I was protecting you. You were the only one who knew my name. I said, voice low. You think that didn't look strange? I didn't think the sheriff would twist it. I thought he'd want justice. I laughed bitter. Sheriff wants his own kind of justice. Miriam looked away. I was wrong. I see that now. Her daughter's voice floated from the house, faint and questioning. Miriam stiffened. You should go. They'll come back. I turned to the door. Paused. Do you still have it? I asked. The letter. His confession. She nodded. I made a copy. I met her eyes. Then I'm not running anymore. And with that, I stepped into the dark, the weight of truth finally pressing harder than the law ever had. I rode through the night with a copy of Henry Holloway's confession tucked inside my coat, the edges creased from Miriam's careful hands. The trail east toward the marshal's outpost at Bitter Ridge was dry and narrow, slicing through badlands that didn't forgive mistakes. I didn't stop to eat, didn't stop to think. Just rode. By sunrise, my limbs ached and my throat burned, but I pressed on. I wasn't running anymore. I was delivering a truth heavier than any saddlebag. Marshal Crane Thatcher was a man carved from granite, his eyes pale and sharp behind a face that didn't blink. His office in Bitter Ridge was quiet when I arrived, just two deputies drinking weak coffee and looking bored. They stood up straight when I stepped through the door. "I'm here to speak to Marshal Thatcher," I said. "It's about Gideon Creek." The taller deputy squinted at me. "You the one the Dillard boys are chasing?" I held up the folded paper. "Not anymore." Thatcher read the confession in silence. Took his time. His jaw worked slow as a mule chewing fence post. And when he finally looked up, his face didn't change. "You Bo Ransom?" he asked. "I am. You killed a man in New Mexico 3 years back." "I shot a man," I said. "He lived, got away. He and his partner were robbing a mining camp. I tried to stop them. Henry Holloway was that partner." I nodded. Didn't know it at the time, but he rode with them. Miriam's husband. Thatcher leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking beneath his weight. "This confession, it makes her husband look guilty. Makes you look like a man with a conscience. I ain't asking for sainthood, Marshal, just the truth on the record." He tapped the paper against his desk. "Sheriff Dillard won't like this." "I expect not. What do you want from me, Ransom?" "I want it filed. I want the charges pulled. I want to stop sleeping with one eye open because a man in the wrong badge decided to rewrite history." Thatcher stared at me a long time, then stood. "Come with me." We walked down to the telegraph office. He sent a wire to the district court in Cheyenne, then another to Gideon Creek. Short messages, but they carried weight. The truth, once lit, don't go out easy. By the time his son dipped below the cliffs, word had come back. Charges dropped. Confession accepted. My name cleared. And still, I felt no relief. It wasn't until I turned cast back toward Gideon Creek that I understood why. It wasn't just about the law. It never was. It was about what Miriam had risked for me, and what I hadn't said to her. I made it back to her homestead 2 days later. Dust clung to my coat, and I looked like a ghost riding out of the past. The fence I'd mended still held. The chimney still leaned a little. Nothing looked different except me. She came out onto the porch with a laundry basket in her hands, froze when she saw me. "I thought you'd be halfway to Montana by now," she said. "I thought about it," I answered, "but I left something behind." She stepped down slow. "The letter worked?" Marshall cleared it. Said I'm free to go. Her face didn't soften like I expected, just grew stiller. "Then why come back?" she asked. I reached into my coat, pulled out the copy of the letter, now worn like an old Bible. "Because you believed me before I even told the story. Because you handed the truth to a system that could have turned it against you." "I did what was right," she said. "That's all." I stepped closer. "There's more to it than that, and we both know it." Miriam looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw every scar she carried. All the nights alone, the half-spoken fears, the weight of raising a child in a world that didn't make space for softness. "I'm no preacher," I said quietly. "I've done things I ain't proud of. But if there's room for second chances out here, I'd like to find mine somewhere near this fence." Her eyes searched mine. "I can't offer much. I'm not asking for much. Just a place to stand still." Behind her, the door creaked open, and Eliza stepped out, barefoot and blinking at the light. She didn't hide this time, just watched me, one hand gripping the side of the doorway. "Evening, Miss Eliza," I said gently. She looked at her mother, then back at me. "Mama says you fix more than just a fence." I smiled. "Well, some things take more than nails and wood." Miriam's hand brushed her daughter's shoulder. The sun dipped behind me, casting long shadows across the dirt, but the space between us felt lighter now. "Stay for supper," she said. And just like that, I stepped through the door, not as a drifter, not as a fugitive, but as a man who'd found the one thing he never thought he deserved, a reason to stay. Winter came early that year. The wind sharpened before the leaves finished falling, and the frost moved in like it had paid for the land. But there was warmth, too, steady, quiet, and earned. I took to fixing things around the place, slow and careful. The barn doors, the smokehouse roof, the cellar steps. Miriam didn't say much, but she noticed. I catch her pausing at the window when I was splitting wood or brushing downcast. Eliza started following me out to the shed, asking questions about hammers and hinges, and before long, I had a little apprentice who walked with a limp and carried more grit than most men I'd known. The town still watched me. Gideon Creek had a long memory and a short temper when it came to strangers. Sheriff Dillard never said a word to my face, but I felt his eyes on my back whenever I rode in for supplies. Didn't matter. I hadn't come back to win over the town. I'd come back for something harder, trust. One evening, Miriam and I sat on the porch, watching the last of the season's geese cut across the sky. Her sewing basket rested on her lap, though she hadn't stitched a thing in 20 minutes. "You ever think about leaving again?" she asked. I thought about lying. About saying no, never, not once. But lies don't hold up well out here. Sometimes, I admitted, old habits don't die easy. She didn't look surprised, just kept her eyes on the sky. "And what keeps you here?" she asked. I turned to her. "You do, Eliza. The way the wind moves through the grass out back. The way supper always smells like hope, even on hard days." That made her smile, small and tired, but real. "You know," she said, voice lower now, "I thought when Henry died, that was the end of something. I didn't realize it could be the beginning of anything. I reckon loss clears the ground for new things to grow," I said. "Sometimes." She nodded. "But only if you're willing to plant again." There was silence after that. Not heavy, just full. The kind of quiet you share with someone who sees you clear through and doesn't flinch. A week later, Eliza brought me something she'd whittled. A little horse, rough around the edges but carved with care. She handed it to me like it was gold. "Mama says you used to be a man running," she said. "Are you still?" I turned the little figure in my hand, feeling the ridges, the spots where the blade had bit deep. "No," I said. "I think I'm a man standing still now." That night, after she was asleep, Miriam and I sat close by the fire. She was quiet for a long time before she finally spoke. "You never told me what happened the day of that robbery," she said. I looked at the flames. I was hired to protect the payroll. They didn't know that. Thought I was another prospector. When the shooting started, I tried to talk them down. Only one listened. "Henry." "No." "The one with the scar." He lowered his gun. "Henry didn't. He fired first." She was silent. I shot back. Wounded the scarred one. Henry ran. I didn't chase him. I just stayed with the wounded man until help came. "You could have lied, you know," she said after a while. "Told me Henry was the worst of them. Said he deserved what came. I don't think it matters what he deserved. I think what matters is what's true." She reached across and took my hand, and I let her. In the spring, Eliza planted wildflowers along the edge of the fence I'd mended. She said it made the place look less like it was always recovering and more like it was choosing to live. I agreed. I never did put my name on the deed. Wasn't mine to take. But I stayed. Through hail and drought, through Sundays when we said nothing and days when we said everything. And when strangers passed by and asked how I'd ended up there, Miriam would smile from the porch and say, "He came to fix a fence and ended up mending more than that." There's no reward in the story. No grand moment where the town gathers to shake my hand. Just quiet days, honest work, and a place where I'm needed. And for a man who once rode from one end of the West to the other looking for something worth stopping for, that's more than enough.